sometimes like I have like a little doubt in my mind about whether or not I'm the right person for you.
It starts with doubt, not love. Luke stares at Meline across the table, his voice shaking as he asks if they're even meant to be together. Days before the wedding, and he's already wondering if he's marrying a stranger. The air feels heavy, her eyes unreadable. Instead of another explosion, she's calm. Too calm. It's the kind of calm that hides something. Hey guys, this is Sabrina from TLC Drama Live. If you've been watching Luke and Meline's story unfold, you know how wild this ride has been. Stay till the end because what went down before the wedding will leave you speechless. And don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know if you'd still walk down that aisle after this. Luke once believed buying peace could fix love. He bought her a puppy, designer bags, and fancy dinners. But every gift only bought silence, not happiness. When he finally asked her to show a little appreciation, she didn't thank him, she punished him with distance. And now, sitting there days before their vows, he feels like a man paying rent for affection that never arrives. Then Meline flips the script. The same woman who called him ungrateful now whispers that she values his sacrifice. Her voice softens, eyes glisten. It feels rehearsed, but Luke wants to believe it's real. He's tired of fighting, tired of begging for calm. So he lets the quiet between them feel like peace, even when it's warning him to run. She tells him he doesn't understand her pain, that she's been through too much to trust anyone. For a second, you can almost feel sorry for her, but the timing is too perfect. Every tear feels like strategy, not emotion, and yet he buys it again, because love makes smart people foolish. What neither of them knows is that this fragile piece won't survive the wedding week. Something happens right before the ceremony that will flip everything upside down. When Luke first landed in Colombia, he thought he'd found paradise. The sun, the food, the woman who promised him a forever kind of love. But within weeks, it stopped feeling romantic and started feeling like a job he couldn't quit. Every argument ended with his wallet open. Every apology was a transaction. When she got upset, he'd rush to buy her peace. When she smiled, it never lasted long enough for the receipt to cool. It began small. A dress here, a dinner there. Then bigger phones, bags, that expensive puppy. The gifts became his language of love because real conversation didn't work. Every time he tried to talk about problems, she'd twist his words into insults. So, he started avoiding honesty. Easier to buy silence than to fight for understanding. Meline, meanwhile, saw generosity as proof of love. The moment he said no, she took it as rejection. She wanted luxury in a life that Luke couldn't afford. He wasn't rich, but he wanted her to feel safe. The problem? Nothing was ever enough. Her expectations grew with every gift, like a hunger he kept feeding even as it drained him. Friends warned him. They said, "You're not her partner, you're her provider." But he brushed it off, convinced she'd eventually see his effort. Instead, she learned how to control him without saying a word. When she got angry, she'd go silent for days. That silence was her power. He'd panic, thinking he'd lost her, and then the cycle would restart: flowers, gifts, more guilt spending. The worst part came when that private punishment went public. One night out with friends, she refused to speak to him, rolling her eyes in front of everyone, making him the joke of the table. He laughed it off, but inside, it burned. That moment changed everything. The humiliation wasn't about love anymore. It was about control. But the twist came when love started to feel like debt. Every fight between Luke and Meline turned into the same script. She'd raise her voice, call him ungrateful, then shut down completely until he caved. The pattern was so predictable it almost felt rehearsed. The moment tension hit, he reached for his card. Gifts replaced apologies. Money became the only language she respected. Viewers saw it over and over. When she threw tantrums over small things, Luke tried to buy back peace. She didn't want an apology, she wanted proof he'd suffer to keep her happy. And he did. He paid her rent, bought her clothes, even covered her family's bills. Every swipe of his card made him feel needed. But what he never saw was how it made her stronger. She learned to weaponize affection. The moment he tried to set a boundary, she'd pull away. No smiles, no warmth, no texts. Then, once he panicked, she'd return, calm, sweet, like nothing happened. That was her power. She didn't have to yell to win. She only had to disappear. It's a dynamic a lot of people recognize. When affection turns into a transaction, love becomes emotional labor. Luke wasn't being loved, he was being managed. He worked harder each time just to earn the version of Meline who smiled at him. It wasn't about partnership anymore. It was about maintaining an illusion, one expensive gift at a time. Eventually, he started doing the math. The bank account kept shrinking while her demands kept growing. Every dollar bought him a few hours of peace, then the storm returned. By the time he realized what was happening, it wasn't only his money that was gone. It was his confidence. His joy, the part of him that once believed love could fix anything. In his confessionals, Luke looked tired. The same smile that once felt genuine now looked forced. Fans noticed it too. He was no longer the man chasing love. He was the man surviving it. And the moment he stopped paying, her love stopped too. Meline often talked about her past. A teen mom for a mother, a father who vanished, a childhood spent feeling unwanted. On paper, her story explained everything. The fear, the control, the outbursts. She said she learned early that love disappears the moment you stop giving people what they want. That kind of pain doesn't leave quietly. At first, Luke listened with empathy. He wanted to protect her, to show her she could finally feel safe. But that's where things got blurry. Because every time he questioned her behavior, she'd turn the conversation back to her trauma. If he felt hurt, she'd remind him of her pain. If he pulled away, she'd say he was abandoning her like everyone else. The conversation never stayed on the issue, it always circled back to her past. Trauma can explain behavior, but it doesn't excuse it forever. Healing takes work, not manipulation. The more Luke gave, the less she respected him. It was almost like every sacrifice confirmed her fear that he'd eventually leave. So she kept testing him, breaking him, pushing boundaries to see how far his love would stretch before it snapped. What made this harder to watch was how believable she sounded. When she spoke about never feeling loved, you could feel the ache in her voice. Fans were torn. Some saw a woman in pain, others saw a master of emotional control. The truth probably lived somewhere between both. She wasn't evil. She was scared. But fear and control can look identical when you're the one living with them. Luke never learned how to separate compassion from compliance. He mistook her tears for trust and her guilt trips for vulnerability. By trying to fix her, he became part of the problem, and she knew it. Every time he softened, she regained control. Every time he forgave, she pushed harder. He thought he was healing her. She thought she was surviving him. Both were wrong. But was her pain real or her perfect defense? It happened late one night after another pointless argument that spiraled out of nothing. Luke tried one last time to talk it out, not shout, not fix, just talk. He told Meline he felt small, like every word he said made her angry, like nothing he did was ever right. She didn't yell back this time. She went quiet, then started to cry. The shift hit him hard. It wasn't the rage he'd braced for. It was soft, broken, trembling. She told him she never meant to hurt him, that she's scared he'll leave once he sees how damaged she is. She said she's been alone her whole life and doesn't know how to act when someone truly cares. Her voice cracked, and for a moment, he believed her. You could see it in his face, relief mixed with exhaustion. He wanted this to be the breakthrough they'd needed for months. But minutes later, the apology twisted into something else. She started listing everything she'd done for him, how she'd given up her life, her comfort, her friends. Somehow the victim turned into the hero mid-sentence. Luke sat there confused, unsure if he should comfort her or defend himself. And in that confusion, she found control again. She kissed his hand, told him she loved him, promised things would be different. That this time, she'd try harder. He wanted to believe it. He needed to believe it. So, he agreed to start fresh, convinced that surrender was peace. But peace built on fear isn't peace, it's pause. From that night on, he stopped confronting her. Every time tension rose, he gave in quicker. He smiled through pain, convinced patience would fix it. Friends noticed the change, calling him checked out. But he called it maturity. He thought love meant enduring. As the wedding week began, everyone thought the worst was behind them. They looked calm, too calm. The kind of calm that usually comes before collapse. What happened the night before the vows changed everything. The night before the wedding looked calm on the outside, but behind the scenes, it was chaos. People in the hotel heard them fighting again. Not screaming this time, more like a low hiss between two people pretending everything's fine. Then, a leaked clip started circling fan pages. Luke pacing the hallway, Meline following behind, both trying to smile when the cameras passed. By morning, the gossip was everywhere. Fans joked that Luke looked like a man walking toward his own funeral. Some defended Meline, saying she just wanted respect. Others said her timing was too perfect, every apology too polished. The internet was split, but one thing was clear, nobody bought their "we're happy" act anymore. Even producers seemed tense. You could hear it in the way they asked questions, slow and careful, like trying not to set off a bomb. But the tension still slipped through. Luke tried to play the loving fiancé, yet every answer sounded rehearsed. And Meline, the master of emotional theater, played her role too well. Soft voice, sad eyes. The audience lapped it up while Luke kept crumbling inside. Later that day, another argument leaked, this time in a cafe. Fans caught them on their phones. She was accusing him of embarrassing her again. He looked lost, mumbling something about wanting a normal day. She rolled her eyes, got up, and left him sitting there alone. The clip went viral within hours. That night, social media exploded with theories. Was she marrying him for love or lifestyle? Why did he still go through with it? Viewers kept asking, how many warnings does one person need? Luke seemed deaf to them all. Even his own friends looked uneasy in behind-the-scenes footage. You could almost see the pity in their eyes. He wasn't a groom anymore, he was a hostage in a tuxedo. Everyone saw the red flags except the groom. Morning light filled the venue, soft and calm, like nothing had ever gone wrong. Guests whispered that it felt peaceful for once. Luke smiled for the cameras, straightened his tie, and tried to convince himself this was the fresh start they promised each other. But his hands shook when no one was watching. Behind the polite greetings and nervous laughter, you could feel it, the quiet before impact. Meline stepped out looking flawless. Every detail perfect, every move measured. She greeted people with grace, hugged relatives, even cracked a small joke for the cameras. The woman who'd spent weeks yelling and crying suddenly looked like a fairy tale bride. Fans watching online couldn't believe it. She's glowing, some said. Others typed what everyone was thinking. This calm looks fake. Social media was already buzzing. Clips of their earlier arguments trended again, side by side with her wedding prep interviews. One fan wrote, she's smiling, but her eyes look like she's already somewhere else. Another replied, he's too scared to call it off now. The entire fandom was live commenting a relationship meltdown in slow motion. Producers leaned into it too. They framed every shot like a love story, but the tension leaked through the screen. You could almost hear the question in Luke's breathing, am I doing the right thing? He looked at her like someone hoping for a sign, but all he got was a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Meline kept control the whole morning. Every answer to every question sounded calm, but too polished. She talked about being grateful for Luke, about how he changed her life. But if you paused the footage, her eyes told a different story, calculating, cautious, maybe even regretful. Guests said later the room felt heavy, like everyone was waiting for something to crack. Luke thought the silence meant peace, but everyone else saw what he couldn't. Sometimes silence before "I do" is louder than any fight. The ceremony began like a movie scene. Strings playing, petals falling, guests smiling. But Luke's family didn't look convinced. His mother's face said everything. You could see her fighting to stay polite while her son walked straight into heartbreak. She clapped when everyone else did, but her eyes never left Meline. That uneasy stare told its own story. Meline floated down the aisle with a smile so graceful it almost looked genuine. She held Luke's hand tight, leaned close, whispered the right words at the right time. To anyone watching, it looked perfect. But those who'd seen the season unfold could sense it. This wasn't love, this was theater. During vows, she spoke softly about forgiveness and growth. The crowd melted. Even Luke's nerves eased for a moment. She looked at him like a woman reborn. But as soon as the cameras turned off, that tenderness disappeared. According to people on set, she allegedly snapped at him for stuttering during his speech, saying he made her look foolish. The switch was instant. On social media, fans dissected every frame. Some said she looked disconnected, almost rehearsed. Others noticed Luke's forced smile and said he looked trapped. One viral comment read, she's not marrying him, she's performing him. The clip racked up thousands of likes in hours. After the ceremony, they posed for photos. She laughed louder than usual, touched his face for the cameras, then pulled away the second the photographer turned. The crew caught it. A flash of irritation, a sigh, then a fake laugh. That 1 second exposed everything, the mask slipping mid-performance. Family members tried to keep it together, but whispers spread fast. Someone from Luke's side allegedly told producers they were worried he'd made a mistake he couldn't undo. By the time the reception ended, he looked drained. She looked proud. Two people standing side by side but living different stories. By the honeymoon, the truth couldn't stay hidden. The honeymoon was supposed to reset everything. New country, new memories, clean slate. But peace didn't even last 24 hours. The first argument started over dinner. Luke ordered something simple. Meline wanted something expensive, then blamed him for being cheap. It was déjà vu, same fight, different city. Cameras caught their smiles for the montage, but off-screen, they were back to silence and cold shoulders. Viewers later said you could see it in her body language. She leaned away from him in every shot, eyes on her phone, fake laughter barely holding. Luke, still desperate to make it work, kept trying. He bought gifts again. A bracelet, flowers, another fancy meal. Anything to erase tension. But you can't buy peace from someone who profits off chaos. The cycle was alive again, and this time, it moved faster. When they returned home, money became the main storyline. Luke's savings had taken a hit. He talked about budgeting, about needing to slow down. Meline didn't like that word. Budget sounded like love with limits. She accused him of changing after the wedding, of pretending to care about stability while secretly wanting to control her. Fans online were divided, half blaming her for greed, half saying Luke knew who she was from day one. Still, it wasn't that simple. Watching them now, you could feel something sad beneath all the noise. Luke wasn't just a victim. He was addicted to the idea of saving her. Every insult made him try harder. Every cold look made him reach deeper into his pockets. He didn't want to lose her because losing her meant admitting he'd wasted years chasing an illusion. And Meline, for all her manipulation, didn't seem happy either. Her anger looked like defense, not joy. She'd built her identity around being the one in control. If she ever let that drop, she'd have to face the emptiness underneath. She didn't trust love that came without struggle. Peace scared her more than conflict. She needed the drama to feel alive, and Luke kept giving her the stage. Friends said they tried therapy. It lasted 2 sessions. She walked out, saying the therapist was biased. Luke stayed behind, still hoping for a sign. The man looked drained, older, like someone aging in real time. Producers allegedly started editing out their worst fights to protect the show's image, but fans could read between the lines. The tension was impossible to hide. One scene that leaked online showed them arguing about rent. She accused him of being selfish. He said he'd already paid for everything. She said love shouldn't have receipts. That line went viral. People replayed it again and again, calling it the real summary of their marriage. Love without gratitude turns into a transaction without limits. Months later, they appeared on a reunion episode. Sitting apart, forced smiles. When asked if they were happy, both said yes at the same time, but their faces told the truth. There was no joy, no spark, just exhaustion. The host looked uncomfortable, sensing what everyone else saw, 2 people pretending they hadn't already lost. It's easy to point fingers, but what makes their story haunting is how human it is. 2 broken people trying to fill each other's emptiness and calling it love. Both trapped in habits that feel safer than change. He kept giving. She kept taking. Both were starving for peace but didn't know how to live without chaos. When love starts to feel like survival, no one wins. When the season wrapped, the story didn't end, it just stopped being filmed. Off camera, Luke and Meline's life looked the same. The laughter, the tension, the same cycle playing out behind closed doors. Fans thought marriage might calm them down. It did the opposite. Marriage only made every problem permanent. Luke's smile faded in every new clip that surfaced online. The man who once tried to fix everything with flowers now looked numb. He stopped arguing back, stopped defending himself, stopped expecting peace. He'd sit quietly during interviews while Meline spoke for both of them. It wasn't partnership anymore, it was performance maintenance. And yet, there's something tragic about how much he tried. He wasn't addicted to her. He was addicted to the idea that he could save her. That one more act of kindness, one more apology, one more gift would finally earn him the love he thought he deserved. The saddest part, he confused suffering with devotion. Every tear she shed became proof in his mind that she cared. Every insult became something to fix, not flee. Meline's side wasn't simple either. She wasn't the villain fans made her out to be. Yes, her behavior was cruel, but underneath it was fear. She'd built her whole identity around being the one in control. The second she felt loved, she panicked. Love meant vulnerability, and vulnerability once destroyed her. Her survival instinct was to push people away before they could leave. She wasn't happy hurting him. She was terrified of being powerless again. So you had 2 people fighting ghosts instead of each other. He wanted validation. She wanted control. Both thought love would heal what life had broken. But love without self-awareness doesn't heal, it repeats the wound until someone finally says enough. Fans kept waiting for that enough moment. It never came. Even in reunion interviews, their smiles felt forced, their bodies apart. Luke would reach out, she'd pull back. She'd glance at him mid-sentence as if checking whether he still believed the illusion. And he always did. He kept telling himself that hard love was still love. What makes this story so haunting is how familiar it feels. Most toxic relationships don't start as war, they start as rescue missions. One person gives, the other takes. Then roles flip. Both end up drowning while calling it loyalty. Luke thought endurance proved love. Meline thought control kept her safe. Both were wrong. If you've ever been in something similar, you know how it happens. The fights don't always start big. They start with small dismissals, ignored boundaries, little sacrifices that feel harmless at first. You tell yourself you're being patient, but what you're really doing is shrinking. You stop asking for honesty, then stop expecting it. And one day, you realize you've built a life around managing someone else's moods. That's where Luke ended up. He wasn't married, he was managing chaos, and Meline wasn't loved. She was feared. Their story became a warning: how quickly passion can turn into punishment when you start mistaking survival for connection. He thought he was proving loyalty, but he was proving endurance. She thought she was protecting herself, but she was isolating herself. Both lost themselves in the process, and once you lose yourself, no partner can bring you back. The saddest part? They both wanted the same thing: to be seen, accepted, safe. But instead of healing, they kept hurting each other in the ways they were once hurt. Love turned into a mirror, reflecting every scar they refused to face. Every fan watching saw it coming. Every friend warned them, but no one could stop it. Because sometimes, the hardest truth is that people don't leave when they're unhappy. They leave when they're finally empty. Their story became another cautionary tale in the 90-day universe. Proof that a ring doesn't fix dysfunction, it locks it in. And yet, even after all this, Luke kept posting photos with captions about growth and second chances. Meline liked the posts but never commented. Maybe that silence said more than any argument ever could. Because another 90-day couple is now repeating the same pattern, and this time, it's even darker.